Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand.
It is our basic human right to be fuck up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Hello and welcome to Occultae Veritatis. I am Sage Murray.
Ood Gallifrey.
And joining us in studio.
Stepping in for Leon Filger, we've got Richard Bigley.
Yeah, Leon had to go because his little baby was sad or something.
Yeah. And, you know, parental responsibilities, you have to keep the little potatoes alive and all that.
You really do have to.
Yeah. Or the government gets involved.
Okay, so I am back to serial killers. And this is going to be a two-parter. So we're going to do Edmund Kemper. So we need some poison.
So, what's your poison?
Ooh. That was a good sound. I like that one.
Yeah. Okay, so I bought cucumber gin and tonic. It's in a can.
Tastes like salad.
It's so good. Yum, yum, yum.
It's like salad with a gin tonic dressing.
Well, it's like it's 7%.
No.
This is the same company that we got those Moscow mules from.
Feels healthy. I would go for one of those Moscow mules right now, actually, over this. But
I love gin and tonic. That's why I got it.
I feel like I have to be wearing all white and be in like the top of a tall tower in order to be drinking this.
Or wearing like all like off-white linen with like a broad-brimmed hat on a beach.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really good.
With a red stain going all the way down the back. Subversive. Yes. Yeah, I don't know.
This is Cabana Coast gin and tonic cucumber lime.
I think I'm leaning more towards Bigley's analysis than your. Like, it tastes like somebody put vodka in like a very watery salad dressing.
Yeah,
it's not vodka, it's gin.
It's the cucumber that's just not doing it for me. I bet if it was like just gin tonic, fantastic. Gin tonic lime, probably okay, but the cucumber just tastes like a salad dressing.
You're wrong. I love it.
I don't know.
It's very refreshing.
I'm starting to get more of appreciation for gin, though.
I mean, I'm sure I'm going to drink this and finish it and might have another if we have one more.
No, I only got 3, sorry.
Oh, well, that's fine.
It's all good. I got, for my episode, we have milk drink.
Milk drink. Super.
What?
Everything will curdle in our stomach.
Asian market canned milk. So that should,
right on.
That should be, so everybody's going home sick.
I always drink plenty of milk.
I'm going to be puking later.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I like gin. I like gin and tonic. I don't know. Something about this. I don't know.
Well, it tastes really like a wienery.
Yeah. It's like a very hidey-tidy. Like I feel like I have to put a pinky up in order to drink it and all.
Yeah, like it's a pretty like fancy schmancy drink.
Yeah.
It's not real like down and dirty.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm gonna give it like an 8 out of 10 because it's good. Like I'm probably gonna make some cucumber. Like I have a soda stream, so I can make carbonated water. And maybe I'll add some cucumber to that and use that with my gin and tonics.
Ooh, that'd be a good idea.
Well, it won't be tonic. It'll just be gin and fizzy water, but just squirt some lime in there. It'll be super good.
I think I can give it a 6 out of 10. It's starting to grow on me with every sip.
Richard Bigley is perplexed.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I don't know. Like I like gin and tonic. It's fine. It's just that cucumber is just eating at me here.
Just throwing you off.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess probably a 6 out of 10.
Does it taste like the extra ingredient that should have been left out kind of thing? And
Yeah, it's kind of like, you like orange juice, you like tuna salad, but, you just don't put orange juice in tuna salad. Like, that's just...
You don't know my life.
oh boy.
That's disgusting.
Oh.
I think it's really nice with a cucumber. It adds like a refreshing aspect to it.
All right, we're going to need some refreshment for the serial killer episode.
Yeah, because I like literally was researching, and then I messaged the group, and I'm like, this got to be a 2-parter because I'm like burnt out on reading about this murder.
I mean, Edmund's story is about as big as he is, so...
Yeah, you're a very tall man.
I was scared to death of failing in male-female relationships. I knew absolutely nothing about that whole area. Even if just sitting down and talking with a young lady. I need to be able to really communicate, and ironically enough, that's why I began picking people up. And I'm picking up young women, and I'm going a little bit farther each time. It's a daring kind of a thing. At first, there wasn't a gun. I'm driving along. We go to a vulnerable place where there aren't people watching, where I could act out, and I say, no, I can't. And then a gun is in the car, hidden. And this craving, this awful, raging, eating feeling inside. I could feel it consuming my insides. This fantastic passion. It was overwhelming me. It was like drugs. It was like alcohol. A little isn't enough. At first it is. And as you adjust to that psychologically and physically, you take more and more and more. It's the same process. So it finally came down to the thing of, do I dare bring this gun out? Already realizing if that gun comes out, something has to happen. It was going to happen. I didn't see it then, but it was going to happen. I was playing a dangerous game with a loaded gun that got us all.
All right, so back to serial killers. We got Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. So he was born on December 18th, 1948 in Burbank, California, and he was the middle child of, his father was also named Edmund, and Clarnell Kemper. Clarnell is his mom. So he had
Clarnell is his mom?
Clarnell. I know, it's a fun name. Also, he had a tough childhood. His parents divorced in 1957 when he was 9. He was sent to live with his mother and 2 sisters in Montana. His mom was an alcoholic and was extremely critical of Edmund, basically blaming him for all of his problems. He was born at 13 pounds, which is insane.
Christ, that's a huge baby.
Yeah, like my kid was born 7 pounds, 12 ounces, and like that was, like he tore me stem to stern.
Yep.
That'll be a next that'll be a upcoming episode. Like it was very bad.
2 holes become 1.
Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Occultae Veritatis tackles childbirth.
Yeah, well, we've got some experience.
Live in the delivery.
It's Saturday night.
Ma'am, how you feeling? Get out! Get out!
Well, he was like a generally like huge kid, and he was standing 6'4" by the time he was 15, and he only got bigger. Like he was enormous.
That's the kind of thing. Like that's something that's noticed. Like that's something. Oh, look at that Kemper boy go.
Yeah,
Christ,
exactly.
Yeah,
it's fucking big.
Curious, was the height and whatever some sort of genetic or birth defect thing which kind of led him to what he ended up becoming?
Well, it kind of ties in because like his mother always made fun of him for being so big and like often called him stupid and like just a big dumb idiot.
So just kind of more environmental term than that. It wasn't some
he
sort
was
of
just
genetic...
like a large man.
Okay.
His mom made him feel like his size was a problem. That
where
the amount of space he took up was a problem and something that he did wrong.
Yeah. And she also refused to basically be kind to him for fear that it would turn him gay.
Oh boy.
Oh.
Yeah. So he had 2 near-death experiences at
we
the
wouldn't want that. We wouldn't want that. Christ.
No. So he had 2 near-death experiences at the hands of his elder sister, once when she tried to push him in front of a train, and another time when she successfully pushed him into the deep end of a pool where he almost drowned.
Christ.
Yeah. She forced Edmund, his mom forced Edmund to go live in the basement away from the 2 girls because she was scared that he would hurt them. So Edmund began displaying very disturbing behavior early on. He would cut the heads and hands off his sister's dolls in an almost like ritualistic fashion. He would also coerce the girls into playing like this weird ass game that he called a gas chamber.
Ooh.
Yeah, so he would have his sisters blindfold him and lead him to a chair where he would pretend to writhe in agony until he died. So like this is how he would play, and he'd like basically like made his sisters do it, and they were all they thought he was weird as hell too.
I mean, I understand playing like weird ass like make believe games when you're a kid, but forcing people to do it with you is kind of twisted.
Yeah. All right, so now it's trigger warning o'clock. We got dead kitties.
Oh no, like kids or like cats?
Cats.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
saddest part.
But
of the
it's
episode.
that like triad there, you know.
Always got the McDonald triad.
Yeah.
So at the age of 10, he buried a pet cat alive in the yard.
No.
When it was dead, he dug it up, decapitated it, and mounted its head on a spike.
No.
And then he later talked about how good it felt to successfully lie to his family about killing the cat.
Oh, so he took pride in the deception.
Yeah,
Of
he
like
took-
doing it in plain sight kind of thing.
Mhm.
Christ.
Like it was his own pet. And then when he was 13, he killed another cat, like a family pet, with a knife. He killed it because he was basically pissed off that it seemed to favor his younger sister.
Christ.
And then he kept pieces of the cat in his closet until his mother found them.
Jeez.
I don't even know what to do with that information.
I know. Like you won't know what to do with a lot of this information. So he ran away to kind of go live with his father, but his father had already started another family. So he only stayed there for a while. Like, and this was when he was 15. His dad decided it would be better to send him to go live with his paternal grandparents in North Fork, where they lived like on a big, huge acreage. Edmund hated living with his grandparents. He described his grandmother as constantly emasculating him and his grandfather, who he described as being basically senile. Alrighty. Now for human murders.
Most of them are people that you would not suspect.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm not an authority. I'm someone who has been a murderer for almost 20 years.
Can you say how many people might be doing crimes like you were doing?
It would be a guess, but it's not. It's far more than 35.
The types of crimes you're seeing today did not really occur with any known frequency prior to the 50s. An individual taking 10, 12, 15, 25, 35 lives is a relatively new phenomenon in the crime picture of the United States. One individual I can think of was described by the prosecutor as being the nicest serial killer he had ever encountered. It was Edmund Kemper.
My gun was under the seat. What in the hell am I doing telling you that? Am I a masochist? Am I looking to be tormented further? I'm trying to show you just how awful this got, how commanding these rages got.
You're looking at hundreds of lives. You're just laying out there victims of serial murders.
My mother was a sick, angry, hungry, and very sad woman. I hated her, but I wanted to love my mother.
The rage usually stems from the fact that the individual, though he may be an adult, remains extremely dependent upon the mother.
She pulled back and she gasped. And I think, whoa, I don't want her to know what happened. I said, your friend got smart with me. She'd been getting really smart with me a lot, but I never hit her. I killed her, but I didn't hit her.
Everyone makes mistakes, and that's what we have to hope for. The more mistakes they make, the better their chances.
I just killed a young woman. I slammed down the lid of the trunk. She isn't dead, she's dying.
If they're doing it by themselves and they tell no one about it, they could go on undetected until they decided to stop.
There's somebody out there that's watching this and hasn't done that, hasn't killed people, wants to, and rages inside and struggles with that feeling, or is so sure they have it under control. They need to talk to somebody about it. Trust somebody enough to sit down and talk about something that isn't a crime. Thinking that way isn't a crime. Doing it isn't just a crime, it's a horrible thing. It doesn't know when to quit, and it can't be stopped easily once it starts.
All right, so on August 27th, 1964, he was 15, almost 16. Ed and his grandma Maud were sitting at the kitchen table when an argument broke out. So Ed got pissed, he stormed out, and he grabbed a rifle that he had been given to hunt with and shot her in the head twice. Shot her in the head and twice in the back.
As you do, I guess.
Yeah. And then there are also some reports that he stabbed her several times with a kitchen knife after she was already dead.
I mean, he's already done post-mortem mutilation to animals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not a huge leap.
Yeah, exactly. And then when his grandpa, who was also named Edmund, returned home from grocery shopping, Ed went outside and just shot him in the driveway. He kind of freaked out and didn't know what to do, so he called his mom, who urged him to call the cops and tell them what happened. He did that and was arrested without any incident or anything. Mm-hmm. And this is when he was 15.
Almost just like turned himself in, eh?
Oh yeah, like he's like I don't know what the fuck to do now.
But he knows what he's doing is wrong, you know. So it's
when the cops asked him why he did it, he said that he just wanted to see what it felt like to kill grandma, and that he killed and that he killed his grandpa so he wouldn't have to find out that his wife was dead.
Do you think that's like an honest interpretation of his feelings? Like I just wanted to see what it felt like.
No.
Or do you think that was Do you think that was like the rationalization he gave to the cops?
I think that might have been the rationalization he gave to the cops because like there was this psychiatrist named Donald Lund who interviewed him like a ton when he was in adulthood, like because obviously he committed more murders than this, or else this episode would be done.
Yeah.
And Donald Lund hypothesized that with the murder of his grandparents, he'd kind of avenged the rejection of his mother and his father. Like that's pretty heavy.
I'm saying I'd wanted to kill my mother since I was 8 years old, and I'm not proud of that. It started with surrogates at a non-human level. Physical objects, my possessions, other people's, destruction of things that are cared about, and then destruction of things that are living on a lower level, small animals, insects, animals, and then finally people. It started coming to a head again, so I went back down. I ran away back down there. And then a month later, I'm up living with my grandparents in the mountains, and 10 months later, I murdered them. It made it worse to be on top of a mountain. I was literally on top of a mountain when it happened. And I sensed everybody in the world just stopping what they were doing, turning around, saw what I did, and are coming to get me. And I knew I was paranoid at that moment. I knew anybody that came up there and gave me a funny look or a fishy eye or quizzical look, I'd have blown their brains out thinking they were coming to get me. And if it had been in a city, I would have been a mass murderer at age 15. I would have killed until they gunned me down. I wouldn't have been able to reason my way out of it. I was scared to death, and I was violent. I felt my back hit that wall. I was the rabbit that always ran, that always backed away, always burned his bridges. And suddenly there weren't any more, and my back hit that wall, and I came out screaming and kicking and shooting.
He was released to the one person that authorities at the state mental hospital recommended he never see again.
I got paroled to my mother. Atascadero decided that I never need to talk to her again at all. Don't give her a Christmas present. Leave her alone. She got her pound of flesh out of you. I wasn't sniveling about my mother to them. I didn't like to hear what they had to say about her. She went through 3 husbands like a hot knife through butter. 4 months after I was out, I was back into the fantasy bag. My first date was an absolute disaster. It wasn't her fault. You know? And I didn't blame her even then. I'm saying it was a terrible tragedy, but boy, she didn't ever talk to me again. It was awful. It wasn't sexual or grabbing at her or nothing. I was just such a dork, taking her to a John Wayne movie and Denny's. It's terrible. I'd never been on a date. 16, that was cool, you know? I'd never been on a date, you know? I was locked up since I was 15. But I can't tell her that. Oh, gee, you don't mind me, you know? She kind of got hung up on my looks or whatever. You know, I mean, she was a gorgeous young lady. Pure class, and she saw something there that I guess wasn't there, and boy, she found out quick.
So Kemper's crimes were deemed, in quotations, incomprehensible for a 15-year-old to commit. And he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia by the court psychiatrist before being sent to the criminally insane unit at I practice saying this, Atascadero State Hospital.
I think you did good.
Yeah, thanks. So when he got to jail, the psychs and the social workers like super disagreed with his diagnosis, saying that he showed no flight of ideas, no interference with thought, no expression of delusions or hallucinations, and no evidence of bizarre thinking.
And flight of ideas is when like you can't focus on one thing at a time, like your mind is just racing and you can't stay on one thing.
Right.
Yeah.
He also had a really high IQ of 145, which is, not as high as mine. Yeah. But still pretty high.
I don't want to get mine tested. I fear that I'm an idiot. Like I fear that I'm like a statistical idiot.
No, that's not true. And also IQ really has nothing. I make fun of myself for being so into my IQ.
I don't even want to measure my dick because I don't want to I don't want to reduce it. I don't want to reduce it to a number.
153. That's mine.
That is my dick. Yes, 153.
Mm-hmm. So he was re-diagnosed as having, in quotations, personality trait disturbance, passive-aggressive type. Whatever the fuck that means. So during this stay in jail, Ed got in like super tight with the prison staff and all the psychiatrists by basically being like a model prisoner. He was actually even trained to administer psychiatric tests and claimed to have helped develop several of them.
Oh.
Yeah, like he got in like super tight. Like this guy was charismatic like as fuck.
I guess as you would be to maybe be a serial killer, to
and but they didn't know that he was a serial killer. They thought he was just like a fucked up 15-year-old at this time.
Those of you that have what's that series on Netflix where they interviewed him?
Well, he was in Mindhunter.
There's the one,
which is a fictionalized account.
I watched side by side comparisons of the man playing Ed Kemper in
Cameron Britton
playing Ed in Mindhunter compared with the real Ed Kemper, like talking, and
it's eerie.
Yeah, like their cadence, like that whole Midwest like kindness and all that, like that whole like demeanor, like that's very much real. He's very much pressing into that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like it's scary. Like looking back on it now.
Here to talk about playing the co-ed killer is Cameron Britton. How are you? Good morning.
Morning. I'm good. How are you?
How does it feel to hear Emmy nominee in front of your name?
Still getting used to it.
Really?
Yeah. It's never had a title before, so
you do now, and you do in this Mindhunter. It is one of the most fascinating stories I have ever heard. Can you tell us about Ed Kemper? You won't believe it. When you're just reading his Wikipedia page, you can't stop. It's unbelievable.
That's what happened when I auditioned. I ended up going down a rabbit hole.
Right.
Who is this guy? And then by the end of the Wikipedia page, you really felt like you read a novel. He is so descriptive of his life that they can fill that Wikipedia page with a lot of info.
He became an infamous serial killer who not only killed his grandparents, but his mother, among many other people. What led him to do that?
His anger from his mother started when he was very young. She locked him in a basement as a little boy when he was 10 years old.
Because she was scared he was going to hurt her daughters.
Yeah, he ended up growing to be 6'9", and when he was 10, he was already about 6 feet tall, and he was burying cats and stuff like that. Oh. So she was nervous. She made a very wrong choice of putting him in a basement. It developed a resentment towards women, and when he became of age, he started picking up hitchhikers from the college she worked at to harm students she cared about, and then he sort of figured out on his own that he was killing people just to get back at his mother. So he then murdered his mother in the early 70s, and he turned himself in, which I feel he did to sort of stay in control. If they catch him, he can no longer seem like this is part of a master plan. If he turns himself in, it seems like he retired more than got caught.
Because he's extremely intelligent.
He is. He has very high IQ.
All right, I want to take a look at a clip of Kemper talking about his mother.
Everything would have been different. From the moment I woke up in the morning, she was demeaning and belittling. And she knew all of my buttons because she put them there. I was her toy all my life, right up until the moment I cut off her head with a hunting knife.
Is it true that you put part of her into the garbage disposal?
Her vocal cords.
Why?
Because I couldn't shut her up. She wanted to destroy me with words, literally, so I shut her up for good. And now everyone knows it was because of what she did to me, because of the way she treated her son.
Wow.
That's chilling.
Right?
Wow.
It is absolutely chilling. The abuse must have been so incredible to drive him to do that.
Yeah, he talked about being in the basement at night and thinking men are below in hell and women are above in heaven. And so he would start, as they all do, with sort of fantasies of violence, and then those don't become enough, so then they start acting on that, and that doesn't become enough, and it snowballs until, you know, you're murdering strangers. I had trouble even learning about the victims because I'd develop empathy for them.
Right.
And I couldn't afford to do that.
Right.
You know, it as weird as it is, you know, it even in this day and age, it just, I can't get past what he did and why he did it.
But at the time, the psychiatrists were like, yes, he is a wonderful man and very, very, very smart, and he just made a bad decision and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so okay.
Grandparent murder, just like, oh, whoopsie.
Yeah, so okay, one of the psychiatrists literally stated, this is in quotation marks, he was a very good worker, and this is not typical of a sociopath. He took real pride in his work. Yeah, okay.
His work being the murder of his grandparents?
No, his work being helping out at the prison and administering all these tests and even helping to develop them because he was like just a real bright kid. So, okay, we have a super smart, charming as fuck guy that not only knows how psychiatric tests are administered and how they function, but also allegedly helped to develop new ones. Like, what the fuck could possibly go wrong?
Like, these, like, it's easy to spot, like, a dumb sociopath, like somebody who's trying to play along, but, like, not quite getting there. A truly intelligent sociopath is horrifying, because
that's Ed.
They will learn about structure in order to fuck with it. And that seems what he was doing. He was learning the language of the psychiatrists.
Yep.
Just so he could, like, get a good opinion on them.
All right, so Ed was released on December 18th, 1969, the day of his 21st birthday, into the custody of his mother, Clarnell. Remember, the alcoholic who basically hates him.
69. Nice.
It seems like a good place to put a mentally ill person.
Right? All right, so the docs were completely convinced that Kemper was like 100% rehabilitated, and his juvenile records were even expunged.
Wow, they were that convinced.
Yeah, like they were like 100% convinced that he was 100% like good to go.
So whatever Kool-Aid Kemper was selling, they were drinking it.
Oh yeah, like he was like I said, like he was charming as fuck.
Christ.
Yeah. So he went to college as part of his parole conditions, and he hoped to be a parole officer, but was rejected because of his height. He was 6'9" at that time. I'm not sure why he was why 6'9" was a problem, but he was rejected. But then he still kind of like kept in contact and remained friendly with law enforcement, and spent lots of time at the local cop bar, and spent lots of time like visiting the local police stations and stuff. So he kind of like kept in the know, and he described himself as a friendly nuisance.
He comes in, we have him sit down, and the first thing he does, he wants to see my creds, so he grabs my creds, and I pass it to him, and he says, you know, I wanted to be a cop, I wanted to be a cop. And I says, yeah, I know. He says, but why did you really want to be a cop, Ed? Why was that? And he says, it's power, man, it's power. And what do you mean? Well, it's power. You got power over people, and I love that.
Many murderers in general, and particularly serial killers, do have a fascination with law enforcement. Many of them wanted to be law enforcement officers, and a few of them actually were law enforcement officers. When you pick a profession, your needs, your own psychological needs, predate the profession that you pick. And these guys are interested in law enforcement because they want to learn investigative techniques in order to avoid apprehension. And how do you learn investigative techniques any better than hanging around cops?
Interesting thing about his whole booking process is that there's a sheet, and it has all of his information, what he's charged with and everything. And when it gets down to the section of who to notify in case of emergency, he turned to me and he says, I don't have anybody left, can I put you down? So that's why my name is on his booking sheet.
He probably got rejected because he looks like he's here to fix your photocopier.
Yeah. No.
Look, Google his picture and you'll agree.
He looks exactly like Cam Britton from Mindhunter.
Yeah, they really did some fantastic casting there.
Yeah.
And I think a reason behind like the RCMP or the police like rejecting people who are too big is they're not as maneuverable in small spaces, especially indoors, and also in live fire sequences they're a much bigger target. So
Well, he's huge.
Yeah.
And this is only at age 21. Like I think he grew to be like 7'1" because lots of guys don't hit their stride until they're a little bit older.
Christ. A 7'1" serial killer.
Yes.
That's hyper intelligent.
Very intelligent.
Fuck.
And like super friendly.
Oh, he's min-maxing a fuck ton.
Yeah. So during this time, his relationship with his mom was still super shitty. So he eventually saved up enough money from doing like menial jobs, like with the Department of Highways, to be able to move out. And he moved out with a friend. So he had a roommate in his apartment. He never really felt like he could escape his mom. They were like, she would call him all the time and drop in with surprise visits like all the time, which would literally make me insane.
Yeah, I would go crazy too if that happened.
Yeah. So he did end up getting engaged to a 16-year-old.
When he was how old?
21.
As you do.
I mean that's it's probably not.
Well, and she was a high school student, but I guess it was a different time, and I'll get into more about them later on the second episode.
I'll say not necessarily negative, but definitely problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
So then he also got into a motorcycle accident. He got a $15,000 settlement and bought a 1969 Ford Galaxy.
Is that a good one?
Yeah, like look at it. It's a pretty cool car.
Yeah, but what year did he buy it? Like it's a newer car at that time.
Well, he got out in 1969, so he got it like pretty new.
Yeah, so it's like a brand new car, but
so he basically was like cruising around, and he noticed that tons of young women and girls were hitchhiking because it was
the 70s.
Yeah, like that's kind of what you did. So he began storing plastic bags, knives, handcuffs in the car.
Oh, he just like
Yep, he just started getting them and putting them in his car.
So he hasn't started killing yet. He just
he hasn't started killing yet.
So I'm just gonna have these things in my car.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have these things in my car. Fuck. So he began picking up girls and then peacefully letting them go. So he said that there were about 150 like hitchhikers in total that he just picked up and let go. This was before he began feeling what he called his little zappies.
Little zappies?
Which were homicidal sexual urges. He called them his little zappies. Little zappies.
Fuck.
Which is the name of my new grindcore band.
Little zappies.
Yeah. Yeah, little zappies. Okay, so that kind of carried on for a while. And then in 1972, the extra gross murders started. This is a lot. So on May 7th, he picked up 18-year-old Fresno State students Mary Ann Pesky and Anita Mary Lucchesa, who were hitchhiking to Stanford University. He just kind of drove for about an hour, and then he kind of sneakily changed directions. Like I mentioned, he was employed by the highway department, so he kind of knew the roads.
Christ.
He knew from his time in prison that if you were going to rape, it is better to not leave witnesses. So he raped them one by one and then killed them, putting their bodies in his trunk. And actually something like kind of weird and funny, when he was handcuffing one of the women, the back of his hand accidentally like brushed her breast, and he said that he felt like super embarrassed and was like, "Oh, sorry," and he literally murdered her like 5 minutes later.
That's interesting. See, there's
I mean, he's polite about it.
It's bizarre though. Like, why would you be embarrassed about accidentally like grazing like the back of your hand on a woman that you are handcuffing together's breast when you literally are raping her and murdering her like 5 minutes later?
Is that just like totally misplaced emotion, or is that a sign that like these things aren't necessarily sexual to him? These are much more about the power and like the casual.
Well, like, I don't know.
The casual stroking of a breast didn't write the script of his power play.
Maybe because he described, he's like, yeah, I said something like, oops, sorry, or something like that.
By the way, I'd like to repeat that I have no clue what the fuck I'm talking about, so my psychobabble bullshit might not mean anything.
All right, so when he was driving home to his apartment, he was actually stopped by a cop for having a broken taillight.
Fucking white privilege.
But he wasn't caught. Like, they didn't, like, he had 2 dead girls in the trunk of his car, and the cop didn't catch him.
Broken taillight.
Yep.
Man, if they made a movie about that, they would have the cop around the back being like, hey, what's this? And Ed Kemper's like, and then it's like, your taillight's out.
Oh, sorry, officer.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I'll be sure to fix it at my most convenient opportunity.
Christ.
Yeah. So then when he got home, he brought both the bodies upstairs and had sex with their corpses. And he took like a bunch of pictures of them.
Yeah.
Then he dismembered their bodies and put the parts in plastic bags.
As you do.
It's hard enough to carry a 50-pound cardboard box up a flight of stairs. Like, just...
Also, keep in mind that he's, like, gigungous.
Yeah, that's true. So maybe dragging, like, a 150-pound college girl, like, up a flight of stairs isn't, like, a huge thing to him. But, Christ, you think that would
2 of them.
Oh, that would that seems like it would be so unwieldy.
Yeah.
Like, arms and legs would be everywhere. That just seems... That seems like on the edge of a Looney Tunes nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then he had sex with their bodies. He chopped them all up, put them in plastic bags, and tossed the body parts kind of by a place called Loma Prieta Mountain. Before he put their heads in a ravine, Kemper engaged in sexual acts with those 2. The word that was described, I forget what it's called, but it's basically like fellatio is when you are excited by what is happening. Like when you're, like, say your penis is being stimulated by the mouth. And this other word, I forget what it is. So I just put sexual acts. It's when you're just like shoving it in there and like it's not being really stimulated. He did that one. So he basically like fucked his dick with these girls' mouths.
He jacked himself off using...
Severed heads.
Severed heads.
Correct.
Severed heads. All right. So then he dumped the heads as well.
That's probably better than cantaloupe, I guess.
Well, I don't know. They're severed heads.
I never want to test that.
No.
That will never be a What's Your Poison episode. Never.
Gross.
While his mother worked at the university, Kemper buried the mutilated bodies in the mountains and took the severed heads home. Then he slept with their heads for days and finally went looking for more.
That I was losing a grasp on something that was too violent to keep inside forever. As I'm sitting there with a severed head in my hand, talking to it, or looking at it, and I'm about to go crazy, literally. I'm about to go completely flywheel loose and just fall apart. I say, wow, this is insane. And then I told myself, no, it isn't. You're saying that, and that makes it not insane. I said, I'm sane, and I'm looking at a severed... I said, well, wait a minute. I see old paintings and drawings of Viking heroes talking to severed heads and taking them to parties, old enemies and leather bags, part of our heritage. This is me back then in 1972 and 73. Unable to live with the fact that I just stabbed to death and cut the throat of an innocent young woman. Innocent in the sense that she did not plan on that happening. She didn't do anything specifically for that to happen to her. Yet she was a very active participant in her own death. And in my memory of that, she was 19 years old, and her roommate in the trunk who died right after that was 18. I didn't go hog wild and totally limp. What I'm saying is I found myself doing things in an attempt to make things fit together inside. I was doing sexual probings and things. I mean, in the sense of striking out and reaching out and grabbing and pulling to me, but appalled at the sense that it wasn't working. That isn't the way it's supposed to be. It isn't the way I want it. See what I'm saying? And yet during that time, I become engaged to someone who's young and is beautiful and very much the same advantages and very much the same upbringing and Disneyland values. And she's very much the reason I surrendered. I picked up 2 girls who were so much like the first 2, it was unbelievable. Almost identical circumstances. And I let them go. Everything went towards killing them, and I didn't. But I'm saying, wow, it's uncanny. It was almost like it was meant to be that way. And I said, wow, this got to stop. And I let them out. They never even knew what was going on. I let them out. I would have gotten away with those 2 being murdered. I said, no, it's got to stop. And a week later, I murdered my mother. Went back to Santa Cruz and killed her.
He killed her with a hammer in her sleep, cut off her head and hands, but then put her vocal cords in the garbage disposal and threw darts at her severed head.
I am an American, and I killed Americans. I am a human being, and I killed human beings. And I did it in my society.
So on September 14th, 1972, he picked up a 15-year-old girl named Eiko Ku. He ended up strangling her unconscious, raping her, and then killing her.
Christ.
He kept her body as well and had sex with it. Then he dismembered her and disposed of her basically in the same way that he did with Marianne and Anita.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a bunch of people out there going right now, oh, these dumb college girls, don't you know you're not supposed to go with strangers?
Okay, well, I hope that none of our listeners are like that, because if you were thinking that, then fuck you.
Yeah.
But there's less. There's like, it seems like all the serial
time.
killers were like in the 70s. Like,
Yes,
they aren't as prevalent now as they would have, as they have been. You know.
Well, it was a different time. Everyone was hitchhiking. It was safe.
Yeah, and I mean, here we've got. I mean, in today's day, we've got cell phones. So I mean, it's like the moment you do something. You know, someone's shooting a text off to their mom or their friend or their grandmother.
I'm in a car with
some strange guy and he's fucking doing something weird, you know, and guess what? Game over. We're done. You know?
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember exactly that. This is pre-stranger danger. This is
it's a different time.
This is don't hitchhike because you might get murdered. This is before that fear was instilled in people. People were still seen as generally trustable.
Yeah.
Unlike the Uber, where you just get in some strange guy's car, you know,
no kidding.
You summon a stranger from the internet
to your house, and then you get in the car, and who knows what.
Yeah, hopefully you get there.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
So on January 7th, 1973, Kemper was cruising around Cabrillo College, and he picked up 18-year-old Cindy Schall. He drove her out to a wooded area and shot her with a .22. Then he drove to his mom's house. He had recently had to move back to his mommy's house and kept her body hidden in his closet overnight. And then when Clarnell, the mom, left for work in the morning, Ed had sex with Cindy's body before dismembering her in the bathtub. He kept her head for several days, performing sex acts on it, before burying it face up in the garden facing his mother's room, later remarking that she always wanted people to look up to her.
He has all these dumb little quips that go with his murder.
He's full of quips. This man is a quippy ass man.
Like, don't be punny when you're a murderer. It makes
He's
it
a very
worse.
punny murderer.
Fucking hell.
Then he tossed the rest of the remains off a cliff. The cops found the remains and said that it looked like she had basically been hacked up and then cut in pieces with a power saw.
Christ.
So now there was a heightened suspicion of a serial killer preying on hitchhikers in the Santa Cruz area, and students were advised to only get into cars with university stickers on them. Well, Ed Kemper's mom worked at a university and had a sticker.
That bit of an oversight there. Yeah, only trust the cars with stickers. It just so happens that the serial killer is one of them.
Yep, exactly. So after a fight with his mom on February 5th, 1973, Ed went and picked up 23-year-old Rosalind Thorpe and 20-year-old Allison Liu. He shot them and brought their bodies back to his mom's house. I literally wrote, same deal as his other victims. Sex with the bodies, sex with the heads, cut them up, toss them off a cliff.
And a single-parent alcoholic mother living in the mid-70s, the social safety net is not fully in place yet. Like there's not incentives programs to help single mothers out there. Like they likely lived in a very small, very thin-walled like home, so it would have been hard to get this stuff by. You would think.
Yep, but
are we able to like Google Earth that home or whatever? Is that like
probably?
That's got to be somewhere. I'm sure. I'd be interested to see what it looks like.
I'll get the address. I'm sure I have it somewhere. So then on April 20th, 1973, this is kind of like when everything kind of started to unravel. Ed went into his mom's room when she was sleeping and bludgeoned her to death with a claw hammer. And then he slit her throat. He then decapitated her and had sex with her head before putting it on a shelf, and he screamed at it for hours and used it as a dartboard. So he just yelled at his mother's decapitated head, threw darts at it, and yelled at it. He then smashed her face in. He cut out her tongue and larynx and put them in the garbage disposal.
Because she talked too much?
Well, just wait. The carburetor couldn't quite break down that hard vocal cord, so it kind of like spat them back into the sink.
Because they're all cartilagey.
Yep.
Yeah.
About this, Kemper remarked, "That seemed appropriate, as much as she had bitched and screamed and yelled at me during the years."
Like, you know...
Like, he's just so casual about everything.
You know how... Like, everybody has that one friend at a bar, or like that one friend in their life that like they're a really practiced storyteller, and they have their little story beats and moments that are really well disciplined and all that. And
right.
Like, he's like that, except with killing people.
Yeah.
Which is so much worse.
Oh, I've got some more quips to come on part 2.
Like
he's just full of quips.
It's like he's figuring out a better way to tell the story each time, and this time it's like, well, the carburetor couldn't take any of her mouth either.
Exactly.
Fucking hell.
So then he hid the body in a closet and went out to have a drink. When he got back, he called his mom's best friend, Sally Hallett, to come over for like dinner and a movie. So she came over, and then he strangled her and put her body in a closet. And then he left a note for the cops that said, this is verbatim, APPX 5:15 a.m. Saturday. No need for her to suffer anymore at the hands of this murderous butcher. It was quick, asleep, the way I wanted it. Not sloppy and incomplete, gents. Just a, quotation marks, lack of time. I got things to do, 2 exclamation marks.
It was 1 week before I murdered my mother. I said, she's got to die, and I've got to die. More girls like that are going to die. And that's when I decided I'm going to murder my mother. I knew a week before she died, I was going to kill her. And she went out to a party, she got soused, she came home, went to sleep. I was woken up by that, came out, I walked up to her bed, she's laying there reading a paperback. As many thousands of nights before. And she said, oh, I suppose you're going to want to sit up all night and talk now. Shit. And I looked at her, I said, no. I said, good night. And I knew I was going to kill her. You know? And I was so cold, it's so hard. And that's the first time in 10 years I've looked at it that way. I mean, that intensely, that honestly. It hurts. Because I'm not a lizard, I'm not from under a rock. I came out of her vagina. You see? I came out of my mother. And in a rage, I went right back in. For 7 years, she said, I haven't had sex with a man because of you, my murderous son. It's one of our arguments. And I cut off her head. And I humiliated her corpse. It's there. You know? A 6 young woman dead because of the way she raises her son and the way her son is raised, the way he grows up. And what's her closing words? I suppose you want to sit up all night and talk. God, I wish I had.
Your grandmother and her daughter-in-law, your mother, were 2 women very important in your life, and you killed them both. Could you say what they were like that led them to the same fate?
Same thing that kept them from ever being friends. They were both aggressive, matriarchal women. They'd been the daughters of strong matriarchal women. I still loved my mother, and it's hard for somebody to comprehend that you murder your mother through love. It isn't a rational process. It's a very painful process. It isn't rational, and I've got to still live with that.
Why did you wind up giving yourself up?
It had to stop. It had to stop. Once my mother was dead, there's almost a cathartic process at that point. I got physically ill right then when she died, when I murdered her. And once she was dead, there was no way I could back out. I backed down from giving up 1,000 times. You know, I used to get drunk and sit out in front of the sheriff's department in a parking lot across the street on one of those old concrete parking berms. And I just sit there and say, no, I still can't. The clanging doors, I can still hear them. No, because they'll never open again. So I rationalized that to give up would be insane. To give up would be crazy. I'd be giving away my freedom, and I don't need to. But I look back on that and wish I had earlier when I was saying those things to myself. The people who were later dead wouldn't be. The regret that came later would have not had to be. Those people, not things, those people would still be with their families, with their loved ones. They would have their own families. If I had had the courage to make that decision, instead of painting myself into the corner.
Where might you be if you'd never given in to the impulse to murder?
Where might I be? If my parole had been successful, I believe I'd be married, have children. I'd be heading toward my first grandchildren.
So that's where I'm ending, because that was enough for me today.
Christ. What's in part 2?
Oh, part 2 will be when he gets captured, his trial, and his life in jail.
Yeah,
and also his depictions in pop culture.
Yeah, and because he was involved in, like, the FBI forming, like, if you listen to episode 1 of our podcast, we pretty much did, like, a recap of what the FBI did in the early 70s and 80s, kind of forming, like, what is the mind of a serial killer? How do they work? How do they tick? And Edmund Kemper was, like, involved in a lot of that shit.
Well, he loved having his like, he wanted to feel important, I think. Like, he just really wanted, because he never got any of that from his mom. He was rejected by his dad.
Thing.
Yeah, so he always felt powerless.
And I mean, imagine being this, like, super tall, super intelligent guy and having no power, no ability, no authority, no anything like that. It's
got to do something to you.
And he seems like he's very, like, beyond how he was raised, he seems very jealous of attention. Like, he killed his pet kitten because it paid more attention to his little sister.
Exactly.
And like in prison, when he was 15 and they were giving him the attention, and he did jobs for them and stuff like that. He just ate it up, and then eventually they're like, oh yeah, he's fine. It's like, no, guy just seems to want attention, and
he wants attention. He wants to feel power.
Yeah,
which is understandable, but also like super fucked up. Because like Ed Kemper is one of like the most fucked up serial killers, like in my opinion.
Yeah, like he's often depicted as like. He's depicted in media as like cutesy and charming, like a lot.
Like kind of like a lovable oaf.
Yeah.
Even though he was like smart as a tack and knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, and like I fell into that. Like when I was watching his old tapes and all that, like I was having those like, oh, I have a beer with these guys moments. Like and it makes you forget that like he killed so many women and had sex with their heads and mutilated their bodies and and like killed a kitten.
2 kittens.
Oh, and he buried one alive. I just got a pet cat, and like my heartstrings are just like right now.
Yeah. Well, it's awful. Like he's a bad man.
I'm excited for part 2 because it seems like we're going to dive into the implications of his actions.
Definitely. Part 2 will be more.
And I bet he's a smarmy motherfucker on the stand too.
Fuck, he's a smarmy motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like we'll be able to find like a bajillion YouTube videos of him. I think he even sang in his church choir.
Oh yeah, and he also narrated a bunch of audiobooks.
Yeah, like he's a very interesting man.
Yeah, and interesting does not necessarily imply good or
no,
more.
He's not a good man. But he also was a victim of circumstance and also definitely had mental health issues. But that's like we've said a billion times, mental health issues don't give you an excuse to, like rape and murder people.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just the fact that if intervention would have happened sooner, like this could have been avoided.
Yeah, and he could have been a productive member of society because he was super smart.
Yeah.
He just kind of channeled it into murder.
Yeah.
Alrighty. The end. But also I'll do a part 2 later.
Yeah.
For Occultae Veritatis, I'm Sage Murray.
Ood Gallifrey.
And joining us.
And filling in for Leon Filger is Richard Bigley.
All right. Love you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
It's so fucked up, man.
Alrighty, Edmund Kemper Part 1. What a wonderful tale, and we'll have much more next week when we dive into the trial of Edmund Kemper and try and get a bit deeper into this giant man's mind. But for this week, our palate cleanser is by the group the Wretched Beasties and their song, What a Fool. See you in the after show. Hello, boys and girls and people beyond the binary. Yeah, I listen to Sleep With Me podcast as well. So this is just a re-announcement of the Valhalla Holy Symbol campaign. So our goddess Valhalla has asked for a holy symbol to be made in her name and her image. As you may or may not know, our beautiful goddess is a professional dominatrix and engages in all kinds of power play stuff with her subjects, her worshippers, and her subs. And she requested something simple she can request to be put on t-shirts, to be drawn on skin, and if she has a submissive that is dedicated enough to be tattooed on their skin. So, here's the opportunity to grow the cult of the podcast and put your stain on the Occultae Veritatis podcast forever. Come up with a simple design for a holy symbol of Valhalla and send it to ovfeedback@gmail.com. Those are the only things. And if your if your symbol gets picked to be our holy symbol, we will give you the option to request an episode of your choosing, so you can request any subject and one of our hosts will cover it, and you will win a free t-shirt for winning. So, send those things in by June 30th, 2019, and we will have an after show where we will rate all the entries. So, get busy drawing, get busy doodling, get busy digital editing, and submit those holy symbols. June 30th to ovfeedback@gmail.com. Alrighty. Hail Valhalla, hail the fans, hail all of you, and have a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Love you all. Bye-bye.